Hi, my name is Jeremy. This is Red Beans Recording, and welcome to a Patreon Q&A thing where patrons ask questions and I answer the questions to the best of my ability. Ooh, we got a lot of them, so let's get started, shall we? XYZ asks, you are absurdly productive. Recommendations on getting shit done. Well, XYZ, one thing you have to keep in mind is at this point, this is literally my job. So when I'm not teaching, I am editing, I'm filming, I'm learning. That's what I do now, which is fantastic. I cannot complain whatsoever. When I was working a full-time job and doing YouTube and music as a hobby, which was my life up until the pandemic, my strategy was to just do as much as I could every day, set a little goal here and there. So basically the idea is that like, even if you're not like making music or something like that, you can be sort of setting yourself up to succeed the next time you have an opportunity to be creative. You know, that's just me. Everyone's time is different. I happen to, make this a big priority in my life, and I think that that's a big part of why I'm able to get as much done as I do. Your mileage might vary, and you also have to keep in mind that, you have to balance real life and relationships and all that kind of stuff with that. So dedication, carving out time, context switching between different tasks that will help you be productive, even if they're not exactly like the super high-end creative thing, and just keeping at it and setting goals, setting small goals, setting big goals. All those kinds of things are really, really good. Garrett Hobson asks, my studio has burned down. No, it hasn't. And the only surviving piece of gear you have is your computer and your audio interface. You have $2,000 to start rebuilding your studio. What do you buy? All right, so this whole what do you buy thing is kind of a difficult question to answer because everybody's different and everybody's going to want a different kind of thing to augment their computer and their audio interface. I would spend part of that money on a really good MIDI controller. I play keyboard, so I would definitely want some kind of keyboard MIDI controller, something that's at least 49 keys. At that point, I really don't need anything else. I can just use my computer to make music. But since I still have, I don't know, let's say $1,500 left, if I wanted a hardware synth, I'd buy the Hydra synth. If I wanted a out-of-the-box solution to making music, I would either get the Deluge, the Native Instruments Machine Plus, or the Digitact and Digitone combo that I have. All three of those, obviously I can't get all three of those, but like the Digitact Digitone are an amazing way to make music on its own. The Deluge is a full-on production station DAW in a box, as is the Machine Plus. So, I know what I can get done with a computer. I know that I can pretty much do anything with it. If I want to work outside the box, I also want to be able to make full tracks. But the Hydra synth is like my favorite synth right now. In general, it's like the one that I've most like attached to and really like feel. So that would be like definitely something I would consider buying instead of like a full-on second production station. The other thing that I can't really live without is Native Instruments Complete. I use all of it all the time, especially like some of the orchestral stuff and some of the like real world sampled instruments. So if I had to like pick and choose, I might like pick a few of those that I really use a lot and then offset the rest of it with some piece of hardware that I really like. But it's different for every person, and what your workflow is will define like what your sort of desert island gear is, Dave Powon asks, modular versus hardware synth in your creative process, when and what circumstances you decide to use one over the other? Hardware synths are weird because, we're spoiled for software synths. We have Pigments, we've got Serum, we've got Faceplant, we've got Vital now, which is free. Like an insanely great synth for free. We have a lot of really amazing software synths. So when a hardware synth comes along, it either has to do something like really, really special for me to want to like dedicate time to it, or it has to sound really, really good. I've had a fair number of hardware synths pass through these walls and throughout my life, and I really haven't hung on to most of them. And I definitely don't even use them as much as I do my software synths, just because there is a cost to entry of having to hook them up and sequence them in a way, and you only get one at once, as opposed to like stacking VSTs. Modular is like that to the extreme. Trying to build a single synth voice in Modular is just like a dumb idea. Like, it doesn't make any sense to do that unless you're like getting a really, really interesting, distinct synth voice. It just isn't cost efficient. It doesn't make sense to me. So Modular for me is about having like these really crazy customized groove boxes Like if you took the Novation circuit and made like every single aspect of it like patchable and editable, you build your own groove box basically. And that's how I approach modular. So I don't really think of them as comparable, because a hardware synth is something that I'm going to be able to do certain types of things on, depending on the synth. Like the Hydra synth, I can do almost everything I can with Pigments or Serum. It's all about modulation for me, and I think that's what actually connects those two things. Is what connects modular and hardware synths for me is like I need to have a robust source and destination for modulation, a modulation matrix, and obviously Modular's the king at that, but hardware synths that are worth their shit also do that really well. So hardware synth is something I'll reach for when I want to do something hands-on and maybe interact with other pieces of hardware. Modular is something that I reach for when I want to make like full tracks that are not connected to the burden of like normal song structure, and I can just sort of sit and lose myself in experimentation. Two different things to me, and I love them both. I don't think I'd be able to like necessarily choose between them, but if you forced me to, I'd probably choose modular. My wallet says that's a bad idea, though. Two questions from Huskatron. The first one is, what is your favorite VST, and why is it Pigments? By the time this video comes out, we will be either finished with or pretty deep into my Pigments walkthrough. Arteria Pigments is a VST that I slept on for a while. I had Serum, and I didn't really see why I would want to fuck with Pigments, but I started reaching for it just randomly in some productions, and I quickly realized that it basically like took everything that Serum was good at and was like, but what if it was better? It's missing some of the super advanced wavetable editing stuff that Serum has, sort of like hiding underneath the hood, like the resynthesis and stuff like that. But I honestly would never do that kind of shit. I'm not AU5. Like I'm not looking to be like a scientist with my wavetables. So Pigments, from a visual standpoint, a usability standpoint, and from a sound standpoint, is just, I really, really love it. And I hope that the videos that I've come out with show you why I would feel that way. Huskatron also asks, aside from consistent practice, were there any specific techniques or exercises you practiced to continue growing your skills, even when, and maybe especially when you felt you'd hit a plateau? So practice is still, I think, something that applies to that idea, because basically you have to practice not being stuck. Does that make sense? Like if you are at a plateau, you need to ask yourself why and what you might be able to do to get yourself out of it. So it's like a creative problem solving exercise where you have to hack yourself. And I spent a lot of time, I believe, on those plateaus where I would like have like really tried hard to like emulate a particular style of music or a particular technique, and I just wouldn't get it. So I would step away from it and try to find my own angle on it. I would try to find something about it that felt more me, as opposed to this sort of slavish emulation of the original. And I would take the impression of it as opposed to the actual thing. Of course, there are some things that are just like technical as hell, and you actually have to push through them, like learning a new device or something like that. But really, like finding your voice or your way of doing something based on what you know of it, I think is the best thing you can possibly do when it comes to hitting a plateau. Like, what is my joy in this process? And use that sort of like personal enjoyment of some aspect of it to push you through. Also, the other side of that is listen to more music, identify some aspect of the music that you really, really like, and then try to figure out like maybe how to make it yours. That's like looking up what you think the technique might be, reading an article about the artist and their processes, and taking these impressions away and then putting them into practice. So you're always looking for new ways to practice, new things to try, new techniques to maybe sort of like mutate into something that you can bring into your own process. I hope that makes sense. Richard B says, not a question. Then why are you here? Richard, just a thank you. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your kind words. It's nice to have you all as part of this community. Fenny Face says, do you need to push yourself pushes in quotation marks. I think he might be referring to the Ableton push. I'm not sure. To do music each day, or does it feel pretty natural by now? It's natural by now, but like you also have to understand that I am in a unique position where I'm not necessarily doing music each day. I'm got a lot of different things that I'm doing. Like video production. I'm learning new stuff. I'm like new gear for videos. I'm putting my skills into practice and pushing myself through some technical hurdles to try and make videos for everybody that show off both things that I'm excited about and also that I think will be useful for people to see. So I have gotten in a really nice groove now where I'm like, okay, I know this day or this afternoon, I'm going to try to do X, Y, or Z. And that could be finishing up editing a video. That could be pushing through a particular new technique on a piece of hardware that I haven't really messed with yet. That could be setting myself up to be successful the day afterwards so that I'll be ready to record or ready to do something. Just lots of little things here and there. And I'm always trying to like just have something I can succeed at, some goal I can set for myself that will help me move forward. And yeah, sometimes that's music and that's great. And then there are days where I don't have anything to do and I'll pull out some piece of gear and I'll just play with it and make something or not make something. Maybe I'll just have fun. Like I'm very happy to say that it feels a natural part of my life, and I really, really am grateful that that's the case. FX Music, hello FX Music, asks, it seems you got quite quickly and deep into Eurorack. Guilty as charged. For me, that made your channel more interesting again. Oh, that's cool, because I think a lot of people are like, what the fuck happened in 2020 to Red Means recording? Has your way of music making changed since you were in the modular realm? Has it effect on your use of other hardware or software? Yes. Holy shit, yes. Mostly about like what's possible. And also has made it really hard to use things that don't have the tools that modular has. I mentioned earlier like the differences between like hardware synths and stuff like that and software synths. And one of the really, really big things that modular has pushed home for me is the desire for being able to like modulate modulation. So having an LFO affect another LFO's rate or intensity, creating complex modulation shapes from combining different sources that do different things. I think that was one of the reasons why I glommed onto Pigment so well, was because like I finally realized the value of being able to do something like that. And then there's lots of little things like, you know, the Piston Honda wavetable oscillator really pushed me to better understand how wavetables could be used in different ways. It was like my first oscillator that I had. I've grown a much bigger appreciation for physical modeling and stuff like that and its possibilities. And then the big thing, I think, is the modular is really, really great at creating not necessarily full randomness, but a lot of probabilistic events. And I've always been obsessed with probabilistic music generation, probabilistic modulation, probabilistic melodies, semi-generative, basically, where like you set... Oh, I'm going to burp. Excuse me. The concept of semi-generative or generative, where you set up parameters for a thing, and then the device sort of like is able to, you know, meditate on that thing. Randomness, probability, non-deterministic things. These are all really, really important to me, and I found them in modular in a way that I just never knew was possible. Also, like the difference between a logarithmic and exponential envelope and what a big deal it makes in modulation and sound. Thank you, maths. I think the other thing that modular really, really drove home to me was that not everything needs to be a song. Sometimes we just want to like create a space for people to exist in sonically. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about probabilistic sequences like Renee can create, or, you know, using Pam's like rskip function to create gates that trigger sometimes, and you create these events that sort of just, you know, happen. And like, it's so hard to do that in a DAW. Like, it's so hard to do that in Ableton, though I guess Ableton 11 will have some of those features. So Same thing with the Machine Plus, which I'm working with right now. I'm like, I wish this had probability. Like, please God, give me probability for my trigs. So it's a double-edged sword. On one end, Modular has taught me a lot about what I can do with some of the tools I already have. On the other hand, it's really made me realize how much I love and depend on certain tools that aren't available everywhere. So I hope that has answered your question. It's given me a deeper appreciation for a lot of things, and I think that's wonderful. Adam Freisinger. He says, I care too much about what others think of my creative output. That's in quotation marks too. I think he actually means creative output. Up to the point where it sometimes blocks me from creating anything. I deliberately won't save sessions to get rid of others' made-up expectations and just have fun. What is your strategy for boosting your confidence? How do you make trust your inner voice more than one of an imaginary future critique? That's actually a really interesting question. I'm going to kind of reference back to the question that Huskatron had earlier about plateaus and practice. I think, Adam, what you said about finding your own voice and loosing yourself from expectations of others is a really, really important thing. And I think that music, as we consume it, sets expectations once we decide that we want to start making our own music, in that it has a certain production value, it has a certain finished, polished sort of like conceptual like thing to it. It feels like it just was birthed out of nowhere and is perfect and shiny, and why can't we do that? So I really struggle against those expectations quite a bit, and especially back in the day when I was like, first getting my footing, and then, probably into the adolescence of my musical career, like really just unsure of myself and my skills. And I don't know who this others is that you're talking about. Like, who is the other that you are worried about in terms of like what they'll think of it? Because if it's just random people on the internet, then guess what? They don't care. Free yourself of that expectation, because no one's going to judge you or your thing except for you. You're actually judging yourself, and you're creating this others, these other people out there to sort of like hobble you from making the progress that you should. That sounds really like weird to say. Sorry, I don't mean to sound like some kind of like weird life guru, but like, unless you have like a specific group of people that you are concerned about that might judge you, then I wouldn't worry about it. And if you do have a specific group of people that you're worried about who judge you, they're not good people. Like, if you're part of like some kind of production crew and they're like always telling you your shit sucks, then maybe you should strike out on your own. The inner voice that you have, the one that you're asking about trusting, it's really the most important thing that you do have. And this goes back to what I was saying about like pushing through plateaus with Huskatron. Like, really center yourself and realize that the choices that you're making, the ones that are being suggested to you in your head, those are the ones that you should at least try. You should at least give them a try. Always like trying to execute on an idea if it's been like mulling around in your head. And then maybe after you've tried it, you get up in your room that you're working in and you step away from the computer and like listen to it away from the computer. Try to listen to it as a conscientious sort of observer, like an objective sort of person that's listening to it, not as the producer, but as just somebody who might be listening to it on like Spotify or something like that. And start developing a confidence in your ability to create and also to observe your creative output as something that somebody else might listen to. When we take ourselves out of context, when we take us as the person making the music out of context, we get a really, really good view of it as what it ends up being. And that's something that somebody else is meant to experience. They're not going to have the context of what it was that caused you to make it, or the tools that you used, or the mood that you were in when you made it. Like, you don't matter. The music is what matters. And that's weird to say, but ultimately, like, that's what art is. We go to a museum and we see a piece of art, and the first thing that we're going to experience is what it says to us individually, our subjective opinion of it. And then we may decide to dive deeper into its interpretation or its history, which may, in fact, richen our experience of it. But our very first interaction with it is via just that subjective consumption of it. So hack yourself, step away, listen to what you've done after you've sort of executed on an idea that you've had, and try to not make quick decisions. I kind of follow this rule of like threes. Like if I'm away from the thing and I'm listening to it and I keep myself from jumping back on the keyboard to change something, and I've listened to it 3 times and I keep on wanting to do that each time, then I'm going to change it. If I don't, then it wasn't a big deal to begin with. And it's a process, man. You got to smooth the edges of your own anxiety out as you're creating, and kind of just learn to let go of the stuff that doesn't really matter and work on the stuff that does. And I know that was a lot of words, and I hope that it was helpful at all. I don't know if I actually said anything that'll help you. You're probably doing pretty good. Don't worry about it too much. Just keep on trying. Keep on trying to make stuff, please. That's all that you can really do, and that's all that really matters. Staring at camera for a few beats before I go into the outro. So yeah, thank you so much for asking questions. Thank you for being patrons. I really do enjoy these things. I hope that this was fun for you. I have a lot of fun stuff coming out on the channel soon. I'm just excited to be doing this. I'm excited to have you all as part of the community, and I really, really, really appreciate all the energy that you bring to the table. My name is Jeremy. This is Red Beans Recording, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Wave to camera, edit music in, put up end card, stare out window, think about dogs. That's cool.